Let me ask you this. Do you really understand what death is? Or have we all been clinging to comforting illusions, stories we tell ourselves to keep the fear at arm's length? For over 1,000 years, one ancient book has whispered a different story. A book shrouded in mystery, hidden in the icy peaks of Tibet, passed down in secrecy from one generation of monks to the next. Its name, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Unlike anything you've ever read, it claims to map out, step by step, exactly what happens after your final breath. But here's where it gets unsettling. This isn't just a spiritual guide. It's a warning, a stark reminder that if your mind isn't prepared, if your awareness isn't sharp, you risk falling into something far more terrifying. An endless cycle of death and rebirth. Imagine that. An ancient manual, fragile and worn, yet powerful enough to baffle even today's scientists and philosophers. Could it be that the answers we've been chasing for centuries were right here all along? And now you're about to step into that truth. A truth so deep, so confronting, that once you see it, there's no going back. Part 1. The Sacred Map. What is the Tibetan Book of the Dead? High in the icy wilderness of the Himalayas, where the earth meets the sky and the thin air feels like it belongs to another dimension, a text was born. A text that dared to chart the unknown. Its name, the Bardo Thodol, more famously known today as the Tibetan Book of the Dead. But don't be misled by that title. This is not a simple collection of prayers or final rites for the dying. No, this is something far more profound. It is a sacred map, a guidebook meticulously designed to help the soul navigate the most mysterious and perilous journey of all, the journey through death and what lies beyond. Imagine this. For centuries, Tibetan monks and mystics preserved this book with the utmost secrecy, passing it down through hidden lineages, whispering its wisdom only to those deemed ready. It wasn't left open for the curious or the uninitiated. In fact, it was considered so powerful, so transformative, that it was locked away, kept as a top-secret manual for advanced practitioners who had dedicated their lives to mastering their own minds. Where did it come from, and who was behind its creation? Legend tells us the text was first composed in the 8th century by Padmasambhava, the great tantric master who is credited with bringing Buddhism to Tibet. Padmasambhava was more than a teacher. He was a mystic, a magician, a mind who bridged the physical and spiritual realms with ease. According to tradition, he didn't just write the text, he concealed it, burying it like a spiritual time capsule, knowing that its teachings would only be understood when humanity was ready. Centuries later, it was uncovered by a tertön, a treasure revealer, who brought it back into the world at a time of great spiritual need. But here's what makes the Bardo Thodol truly remarkable. More than a guide for the dying, it was a manual for mastering life itself. You see, the Tibetans hold a radically different view of death than most of us in the West. For them, death is not the grim full stop we fear. It's a transition, a process, a doorway into shifting realms of consciousness. And if you understand that journey, if you're trained and ready, you don't have to be a passive victim of fate. You can take the reins of your own destiny, even as your body falls away. The word Bardo itself translates to intermediate state, the gap between two realities. And the book outlines in meticulous detail what happens during these bardos, these in-between phases, where the soul moves through realms that are at once terrifying, beautiful, and utterly unfamiliar. But here's the deeper truth. Bardo isn't just a state that happens after death. It can occur during any major transition in life, during trauma, during deep meditation. even during moments when your old identity falls away and something new begins. In that sense, this isn't just a book about death. It's a manual for survival in times of transformation. And the Tibetans knew something powerful. The key to conquering the Bardos after death is to practice moving through them while you're still alive. Because the state of your mind at death is nothing more than the result of the patterns you've trained every day. But the intrigue of this text doesn't end there. This bridge between ancient mysticism and modern psychology fascinated Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds of the 20th century. Jung was captivated by the Bardo Thodol, seeing in it something that transcended culture or religion. He famously called it the key to the collective unconscious, recognizing that its vivid descriptions of deities, demons, and visions were, in essence, archetypes, universal patterns of the human psyche that we all share, regardless of background. For Jung, the book wasn't just a manual for the dead. It was a mirror of the living mind. The gods and monsters described in its pages weren't supernatural beings from a distant realm. They were reflections of our own deepest fears, desires, and potentials. Imagine that. An ancient text written in a remote corner of the world over a millennium ago, speaking the same psychological language that modern science is only now beginning to understand. A spiritual document that doesn't just bridge life and death, but also bridges Eastern mysticism and Western psychology. The Tibetan Book of the Dead dares to tell us, death is not the end. It is a perilous passage through the shifting landscapes of consciousness, a journey sculpted by your own mind. It's a bold claim, and yet, the deeper you dive into its teachings, the more you realize this isn't just spiritual poetry. It's a roadmap, precise, vivid, and terrifyingly relevant. For centuries, monks prepared themselves for this journey through strict meditation, visualization, and ritual. They understood that at the moment of death, clarity of mind becomes your only weapon. Fail to recognize the truth of what's happening, and you risk being swept into the whirlwind of karma, forced to repeat the cycle of life and death endlessly. And so the message of the Bardo Thodol is clear. This book isn't just for the dying. It's for all of us, right now. Because whether we realize it or not, we are all moving through Bardos every day. Moments of loss, change, uncertainty, these are the dress rehearsals for the ultimate transition. And the deeper question remains, will you recognize the Bardo you're in and rise to meet it? This ancient text, mysterious, sacred, and surprisingly modern, is your invitation to find out. Part 2. The Three Bardos, a journey through the unknown. Picture this. You are falling, weightless, drifting through space with no direction, no ground beneath you. And as you fall, you pass through three invisible gates. Each gate is a test, a mirror, a trial for your soul. This is the essence of the Tibetan teaching on the Bardos. In Tibetan Buddhism, the word Bardo means in-between state, a gap between two realities. But the Bardos are not just mystical stages after death. They are a profound map of consciousness, describing the exact phases your mind moves through when your physical life comes to an end. The Bardo Thodol outlines three main Bardos that every soul must pass through. Let's break them down. First, the Chikai Bardo. This is the very moment of death. The precise instant when your breath falters, your heartbeat slows, and your physical senses shut down. But while your body fails, your consciousness is awakened, faced with what the Tibetans call the clear light of ultimate reality. It's a blinding brilliance, a moment of pure, unfiltered truth. If you recognize it as your true nature, you can achieve instant liberation. But if fear creeps in, if your mind clings to familiar patterns, that window closes and the journey continues. Second, the Chonyid Bardo. This is the realm of visions, where your mind projects stunning images onto the canvas of consciousness. You might encounter peaceful deities radiating compassion, or terrifying, wrathful figures with eyes like fire. But here's the secret: none of these visions are external. They are you, your hopes, your fears, your hidden wounds. Everything you've ever carried in your heart now takes shape and confronts you directly. In this Bardo, if you can recognize these visions as projections of your own mind, you move closer to freedom. If not, the cycle pulls you deeper. Third, the Sidpa Bardo, the final gateway, the threshold of rebirth. At this stage, your consciousness is drawn toward new life. Your deepest attachments, desires, and unresolved karma become the forces that pull you into your next incarnation. In this phase, you don't consciously choose your next life. It is magnetically shaped by the patterns you've created. 3 stages, 3 gates, each offering a path to liberation, or another turn on the wheel of samsara. But here's where it gets even more profound. The Tibetans teach that Bardos don't just happen after death. They happen throughout life. Every time you lose something, every time a relationship ends, a job disappears, a part of your identity crumbles, you are in a Bardo. You are moving through an in-between state, where the old dissolves and the new has not yet taken form. Think about that for a moment. Right now, you might be in a Bardo without even realizing it. That strange feeling of being ungrounded, of floating between 2 phases of your life, that's not random. It's a universal pattern described in these ancient teachings, and modern psychology echoes this in surprising ways. In anthropology and psychology, there's a concept called liminal space. It refers to those transitional periods where the usual structure of life breaks down and you are forced to rebuild your sense of self. Graduation, divorce, loss. Even the space between sleeping and waking, these are all liminal zones where your old identity is stripped away and something new is waiting to be born. Tibetan Buddhism, thousands of years ago, recognized this same truth. The Bardos are not just spiritual mythology, they are blueprints for navigating change. Death, they tell us, is just the most dramatic Bardo, but the lessons apply to every transition. And here's the real twist. The way you handle the small Bardos of life, the breakups, the setbacks, the crises, prepares you for the ultimate Bardo. Every time you face uncertainty with awareness, every time you let go with grace, you are training yourself for the great passage to come. So let's pause and ask, where are you right now? Are you in a Bardo? Are you standing in that uncomfortable gap between what was and what's next? Because whether you know it or not, you are being given a powerful opportunity. Each transition is a rehearsal, a microcosm of that final journey. And the sooner you start recognizing that, the stronger, wiser, and freer you become. The Bardo Thodol isn't just about what happens when you die. It's about how to live, how to navigate every transformation with clarity, courage, and purpose. And the question that echoes through the ages remains: will you recognize the gate you're passing through right now? Or will you sleepwalk through it, missing the chance for awakening? The choice is always yours. Part 3. The clear light, the first and greatest test. The moment of truth. Your breath has slowed. Your heartbeat fades to silence. And then, like a cosmic switch flipped, you are suddenly met with something indescribable. A brilliance, a radiance so vast, so piercing, that it seems to dissolve the entire universe. There is no shape, no sound, no you as you knew yourself. Only light. This is not a dream. It's not a hallucination. This is the moment the Tibetans describe as the Phap Tan Quang Min, the clear light of ultimate reality. The purest essence of mind, the unfiltered truth that lies behind all illusion. It's the final mirror, the place where you stand face to face with your true nature, stripped of ego, story, and identity. In the teachings of the Bardo Thodol, this is the first and greatest test you will ever face. The teachings say, if you can recognize this dazzling brilliance as your own true nature, if you realize that this light is you, you can achieve immediate liberation. You merge with the infinite. You escape the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. But there's a catch. For most of us, this moment, despite its breathtaking clarity, is terrifying. Conditioned for a lifetime to identify with form, with the body, with thoughts and emotions, the mind recoils from this overwhelming radiance. And in that split second of fear, we look away. We lose the moment. And the door to liberation swings shut. The Tibetans warn, the window is brief, a flash, a crack of lightning across the sky, and then it's gone. But this isn't just ancient mythology. Let's look at what modern science is discovering. In recent years, neuroscientists have studied the brains of people at the edge of death. What they've found is extraordinary. Just as the heart stops, the brain doesn't simply fade to black. Instead, there's a sudden surge of high-frequency activity, a burst of synchronized gamma waves that lights up the brain's cortex like a final blaze of awareness. This phenomenon, often referred to as the gamma wave burst, has been recorded in multiple studies. It's believed to be linked to the vivid visions of light, tunnels, and expanded consciousness often reported in near-death experiences. Is it proof of what the Tibetans have taught for centuries? We can't say for certain, but the parallels are hard to ignore. Both the spiritual and the scientific seem to agree. At the moment of death, consciousness is more awake, not less. It's a moment of astonishing clarity. But clarity alone isn't enough. You must be prepared, because what matters most is how you respond. Will you recognize the light as the deepest, truest part of yourself? Or will you flinch, trapped by habit, fear, and attachment? The Tibetans are clear. If you recoil from the clear light, your consciousness begins to fragment. The brilliant radiance fades, replaced by familiar patterns of thought and emotion. And once that happens, you slip deeper into the Bardos, where visions, illusions, and karmic echoes begin to take over. This is why Tibetan monks dedicate their lives to mind training. Through meditation, visualization, and constant remembrance of impermanence, they aim to cultivate a mind that can stay awake, even in the face of death. They teach, death is the final exam. Your preparation? It begins now, while your breath still flows and your mind is clear. And here's something profound. Tibetan masters say the clear light isn't reserved just for death. It can be glimpsed in life, in deep meditation, in moments of pure presence, even in those fleeting instants when time seems to stop and you feel part of something vast and boundless. These are previews, rehearsals, and every time you recognize that clarity, whether in meditation or in the middle of a chaotic day, you strengthen your ability to meet the ultimate moment with calm and recognition. So, let's bring it back to you. When that final moment arrives, when everything familiar dissolves and you are face to face with that infinite light, what will you do? Will you panic? Or will you remember? Will you have the courage to recognize the light as yourself? Because that light, no matter how overwhelming or terrifying, is you. And that realization, if you are ready for it, can free you in a single instant. The Bardo Thodol tells us, if you recognize the clear light, there is no need to pass through the other Bardos. You are liberated at the source. But if not, the journey continues into realms of visions, tests, and choices. So let's end with a simple, powerful question. Are you training your mind today for that moment? Because whether we like it or not, that moment is coming for all of us. And in the end, the greatest test of all is whether you can look into the ultimate mirror and recognize your own face. Part 4. The Visionary Realm. Meeting Gods and Demons. You've crossed the first threshold. The clear light has faded. And now, you step into a world unlike anything you've ever imagined. This is the realm of visions, phantasmagoric, surreal, overwhelming. A place where peaceful Buddhas with radiant smiles appear one moment, and fierce, fire-eyed demons roar the next. This is the Chonyid Bardo, the second major stage of the Tibetan after-death experience. And here, things become personal. The ancient teachings are clear. Everything you see in this realm, every shimmering deity, every monstrous figure, is not external. They are projections of your own mind. You are, in effect, watching a movie, a film written, directed, and produced by you. And the kicker? You can't leave the theater. The Tibetans teach that in this bardo, the mind becomes hyper-lucid, hyper-creative. All your deepest thoughts, fears, desires, and memories rise up like actors on a cosmic stage. And they don't ask politely. They demand your attention. In the beginning, you might encounter peaceful, luminous beings, representations of compassion, wisdom, and balance. But if your mind wavers, if doubt, fear, or attachment takes hold, these visions begin to shift. The serene faces morph into terrifying monsters, blazing with anger, wielding weapons, their eyes burning holes through your consciousness. For many, this is the hardest part of the journey. Because while the clear light was simple and pure, the Chonyid Bardo is messy, chaotic, and deeply personal. And here's where it gets fascinating. To illustrate just how personal and vivid these visions can be, let's look at the case of Sarah, a woman who had a near-death experience during a severe illness. She described floating out of her body, seeing a tunnel of light. And then, suddenly, she was surrounded by grotesque, monstrous faces, twisting, shouting, clawing at her. She felt sheer terror, and yet, somehow, a part of her knew, deep down, that these were not real beings. They were reflections of something inside her. When Sarah woke up, doctors were baffled by the vividness of her report. Science could explain some of it. The classic tunnel of light, for example, is often attributed to the brain's response to oxygen deprivation. But the hyper-detailed visions of creatures, where did those come from? What made them so intense, so personal? Modern neuroscience offers theories. Some say these images come from the brain's limbic system, where deep-seated emotions and memories are stored. Others suggest the dying brain taps into archetypal symbols embedded in the collective unconscious. Which brings us to Carl Jung. Jung was fascinated by what he called the shadow, the dark, repressed parts of ourselves that we spend a lifetime ignoring. For Jung, the gods and demons of the Bardo weren't literal beings. They were archetypes, universal symbols that arise when the conscious mind collapses and the unconscious spills out. In the Chonyid Bardo, you meet your shadow face to face. The peaceful deities, They are your higher potentials, your wisdom, your compassion, your capacity for enlightenment. The wrathful deities. They are your fears, your anger, your unresolved wounds, the parts of yourself you've spent a lifetime running from. And here's the thing. Whether you meet a Buddha or a demon in this realm depends entirely on your inner state. It's not a cosmic punishment. It's a mirror. You are watching the movie of your own mind, raw, unedited, impossible to escape. The Tibetans emphasize that the Chonyid Bardo is both a challenge and an opportunity. Because even in the most terrifying visions, there's a hidden doorway to liberation. If you can recognize the monsters as your own projections, if you can hold steady in the face of terror and say, "This is my mind creating this," you gain power. And with that power, you can dissolve the vision, reclaim your awareness, and step closer to freedom. But if you lose yourself in fear, if you react as though the visions are real, external threats, you become trapped in their grip, spiraling deeper into confusion and illusion. This is why Tibetan practitioners train relentlessly, not just in meditation, but in visualizing peaceful and wrathful deities. They do this so that when these visions arise, whether in meditation or at death, they are familiar. They've rehearsed the scene. They've learned to look beyond the surface. And here's a profound insight. The Tibetans tell us that life itself is a kind of Chonyid Bardo. Every fear you face, every moment when anger surges or when grief overwhelms you, these are your wrathful deities in daily life. The question is, do you react blindly, or do you pause, recognize the projection, and respond with awareness? The practice is the same, whether you're alive or in the Bardo. Awareness is your superpower. So as you reflect on this, ask yourself, what visions am I projecting in my own life right now? Which parts of my shadow am I avoiding? Because the truth is, you don't have to wait for death to meet your gods and demons. They are here now, waiting in the quiet corners of your mind. And the more courage you bring to facing them today, the more prepared you'll be when the ultimate visionary realm unfolds. In the end, the Chonyid Bardo is not just a passage through death. It's a training ground for self-mastery, a mirror of your deepest self, offering you the chance to reclaim every lost piece of your soul. The question is, will you face it? Part 5. The Rebirth Mechanism. Karma in action. You've made it through the visions, but the journey isn't over. In fact, in many ways, it's just beginning. Now you find yourself standing in the heart of a vast, shifting maze, an endless labyrinth of passageways and doorways. You are standing at a crossroads, surrounded by 1,000 paths, and each path leads to a new life. This is the Three Bardos, the realm of rebirth. Here, everything you've ever done, every thought you've harbored, every fear, every desire, they all rise up now, like invisible strings, pulling you toward your next existence. And make no mistake, this isn't about punishment. There's no cosmic judge, no god sitting on a throne deciding your fate. The Tibetans are crystal clear about this. The universe does not judge you. The karma you have created through your actions, your intentions, your mindset, becomes the architect of your next reality. It's a radical idea, because what it tells us is that rebirth isn't random. It's a direct reflection of your inner state, the energy you've generated through your life, whether love, anger, fear, compassion, magnetizes you toward a future that matches that frequency. Picture it like this. You are a magnet, and every thought, word, and deed you've ever set in motion creates a gravitational pull. In the Sidpa Bardo, these forces intensify. They swirl around you, drawing your consciousness toward the form, the world, the very conditions that mirror your karmic blueprint. It's here that Tibetan teachings dive into vivid detail. The soul, stripped of its physical body, begins to gravitate toward visions of potential wombs, of earthly environments that resonate with its vibrational energy. And as the pull strengthens, the choice, if you can even call it that, becomes less a decision and more a compulsion. In this way, rebirth isn't something that happens to you. It's something your own energy architects. And this brings us to a fascinating parallel with modern metaphysics. In today's world, you've likely heard of the law of attraction, the principle that like attracts like, that the thoughts and emotions you focus on act as a magnet, shaping your reality. Sound familiar? What the Tibetan masters described thousands of years ago in the Sidpa Bardo is eerily similar. They taught that your consciousness, in its purest state, is a kind of frequency generator. And in the ultimate in-between moment, the passage between death and new life, that frequency determines where you land next. In other words, you don't just attract what you want, you attract what you are. This reframes everything because it places the power and the responsibility squarely in your hands. So let's pause here and reflect. If today were the day you died, if right now you stepped into the Sidpa Bardo, where would your energy pull you? What kinds of visions would appear before you? And more importantly, if today is the day you are planting seeds, what would you sow for your next life? This is the profound wake-up call of the Bardo Thodol. Every single moment of your life is shaping the architecture of your soul's future. Every act of kindness, every grudge held, every fearful reaction, it's all being woven into the fabric of your karma. But, and here's the hope, this is not a fatalistic system. Karma is not some ironclad destiny, it's fluid, mutable, alive. The Tibetans emphasize, with awareness, karma can be purified, transformed, transcended. That means your destiny isn't set in stone. It's being sculpted moment by moment, breath by breath. Right now, you are writing the script for your next chapter, whether you're conscious of it or not. This is why mindfulness, ethical living, and self-reflection are at the core of Tibetan practice. Because when the time comes, when you stand in that maze of possibilities, you want to be ready. And here's something even more profound. The Tibetans don't just teach this for the sake of the afterlife. They believe that understanding the Sidpa Bardo helps you live better now. Because, really, every day is a kind of rebirth. Every morning you wake up, you are stepping into a new version of yourself. A new life shaped by the energy you carried from yesterday. Rebirth, they say, is not only what happens after death. It's what happens with every choice you make, every time you let go of the old and step into the new. So as you listen to this now, ask yourself, what patterns are you repeating? What energies are you feeding? And what kind of future, what kind of next life are you weaving with your daily thoughts and actions? Because whether you believe in literal reincarnation or see this as metaphorical truth, one thing is certain. The universe responds to the energy you put out. The universe does not judge, it reflects. In the Sidpa Bardo, that reflection becomes unmistakable. And the key message of the Tibetan Book of the Dead is this: it's never too late to reshape the path. The maze of rebirth may seem complex, but with awareness you can learn to navigate it consciously, powerfully, and perhaps one day step beyond it entirely. The next step of the journey awaits. Are you ready? Part 6. living preparation, practices for the brave. Voiceover. It's often said that the way you live determines the way you die, but there's a deeper truth. Living consciously is training yourself to die well. In Tibetan Buddhism, death isn't a distant event to be feared or avoided. It's a constant companion, a teacher that walks beside you every single day. And the Bardo Thodol is clear. True preparation doesn't begin on your deathbed. It begins now. So the question is, how do you prepare? How do you train your mind to meet death, not with fear, but with calm, clarity, and strength? The Tibetan masters have passed down precise, time-tested practices, spiritual tools designed to strengthen the heart, sharpen awareness, and build the kind of inner resilience that doesn't crumble when the end arrives. Let's begin with the foundation, the contemplation of impermanence. Every morning, Tibetan monks reflect. Everything I hold dear, my loved ones, my body, my identity, will one day dissolve. To a modern mind, that might sound grim, but for them, it's deeply liberating. By facing impermanence head-on, they loosen their grip on what's fleeting. They stop clinging to illusions of permanence, and in doing so, they prepare for the ultimate letting go. This practice, known as Quan Chio Vo Tuong, is like mental weight training. Every reflection strengthens your ability to stay balanced as life inevitably shifts and changes. But awareness alone isn't enough. The heart must also be strengthened, and that's where Tonglen comes in, a practice as radical as it is transformative. Tonglen turns instinct on its head, transforming fear into fearless compassion. Its instructions are simple but powerful. Breathe in suffering, breathe out love. As you inhale, you imagine drawing in the pain and struggles of others, their fears, their grief, their wounds. And as you exhale, you send out healing, compassion, and peace. Why do this? Because by embracing what others reject, you dissolve the barriers of ego. Your heart becomes vast, unbreakable, and fearless. Over time, Tonglen reshapes suffering itself, turning it from something you fear into something you transform. In the face of death, this training is priceless. A mind well-versed in Tonglen doesn't panic at its own end. Instead, it meets death as just another opportunity to expand love, even at the darkest hour. Next comes the power of mantra. To an outsider, mantras may look like simple chants, but to a Tibetan practitioner, they are much more than that. Mantra is vibration, alignment, and frequency. Each syllable, carefully selected and repeated, tunes the mind to deeper states of awareness. Take Om Mani Padme Hum, for example. It's not just words, it's a key that unlocks inner doors. By weaving these sacred sounds into your consciousness, you build an inner stability that holds firm during chaos. In the Bardos, where visions twist and illusions tempt, a mind anchored in mantra remains steady, centered, and unshaken. And then there's one final practice, often reserved for the most advanced seekers. Phowa, the art of consciousness transference. Phowa is seen as a fast track in Tibetan Buddhism, a powerful technique that, if mastered, allows a practitioner to direct their consciousness at the moment of death, propelling it toward enlightenment or a pure realm. The imagery is striking. As the body weakens and the senses fade, the practitioner launches their awareness upward, like an arrow piercing through the veils of illusion, breaking free from the pull of karma. This isn't just mystical talk, it's a practice with real-life results. Take Lama Tenzin, a master deeply trained in Phowa. In his final hours, he gathered his students, lay down calmly, and entered meditation. Witnesses described his passing as radiant, peaceful, almost as if his body glowed from within. He reportedly whispered, "I feel weightless, like mist rising off the mountains, no fear, only vastness." For days afterward, his body remained unusually luminous, seen as a sign of successful consciousness transfer. Stories like this are not uncommon in Tibetan tradition. They stand as powerful proof that death can be met not just peacefully, but powerfully. And here's where it all comes together. These practices, Quan Chiu Vo Thuong, Tonglen, Mantra, Phawa, aren't just tools for dying, they're tools for living. When you reflect daily on impermanence, life becomes sharper, more vibrant, more meaningful. When you breathe in suffering and breathe out compassion, you break down the illusion of separateness. When you train your mind with mantra, you develop deep steadiness in an uncertain world. And when you practice Phawa, you learn to aim your awareness like an arrow, whether facing death or life's countless challenges. Living consciously is training yourself to die well. But here's the secret. When you train to die well, you don't just prepare for the end. You begin to live with more depth, more courage, and more love than you ever thought possible. So now the question turns to you. How are you preparing? Are you letting your days slip by in distraction, assuming death is far off? Or are you using every breath, every moment, every challenge as an opportunity to build clarity, strength, and peace? The teachings are timeless. The tools are here. The invitation is yours to accept. And remember, the next test will come. The only question is, will you be ready? Part 7. The critical moment. Are you ready? Voiceover. We've talked about the theory. We've explored the practices. But now, let's face the reality. The moment that comes for every one of us. No matter who we are, no matter how much we try to avoid it. When death knocks at your door, what will you do? Will you meet it with calm, clarity, and courage? Or will you recoil, caught off guard, overwhelmed by fear? This is the question at the heart of the Bardo Thodol. And it's not a question for someday. It's a question for right now. Because as the Tibetan masters tell us, you can't wait until the end to begin your training. They remind us that every challenge, every crisis, every painful loss in your life, these are mini rehearsals. Each one is a test, a dress rehearsal for the final act. And how you respond today shapes who you'll be when the ultimate test arrives. Think about the last time you faced real fear. Did you shut down? Did you panic? Or did you find a way to ground yourself, breathe, and face it head-on? The truth is, every emotional storm you weather, every upheaval you endure, is a training ground. It's your chance to build the muscles of awareness, resilience, and presence. We cannot avoid death, the masters say, but we can train to meet it like a spiritual warrior. And here's where modern psychology intersects in a powerful way. In today's world, we often hear about resilience, the ability to bounce back after adversity. Researchers have studied survivors of trauma, soldiers returning from war, people who've endured unimaginable losses. What separates those who collapse under pressure from those who grow stronger? It's not just luck. It's a mindset. It's the ability to stay centered, to hold steady when everything around you is falling apart. This is exactly what the Tibetans have been teaching for centuries. Their practices, mindfulness, mantra, tonglen, phawa, are not just spiritual rituals. They are resilience training, a way to build unshakable inner strength that doesn't crack under the weight of fear or uncertainty. Dr. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and renowned psychiatrist, once wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." That's what the Bardo teachings are about. They don't promise to take away death. They don't promise to shield you from suffering, but they show you how to transform yourself so that no matter what happens, you remain in command of your mind and your heart. Let's not sugarcoat it. The moment of death is the greatest storm you will ever face. It strips away everything familiar. It rips the ground from under your feet. And in that raw, naked state, you are left with only one thing: your awareness. Will it be strong enough? Will it be clear enough? That depends entirely on how you've trained it. The Tibetans tell us, every fear you face today, every time you sit with discomfort instead of running from it, every time you breathe through panic and choose awareness over reaction, you are building your foundation. You are forging the weapon that will serve you when the ultimate moment comes. And here's the twist: the better you prepare for death, the better you live. Because the truth is, fear of death is at the root of many of our daily anxieties. It shows up in subtle ways, in the fear of loss, in the fear of failure, in the fear of change. But when you start to face death consciously, that grip begins to loosen. You become braver, more grounded, more alive. Dying well and living well are two sides of the same coin. So here's your invitation. Straight from these ancient teachings and backed by modern psychological wisdom. Start seeing every crisis, every shake-up, every heartbreak as your training ground. Not as punishment, not as something to merely survive, but as a gift, a chance to build resilience, clarity, and strength. Every time you rise above fear, you make your awareness stronger. Every time you meet pain with presence, you build unshakable courage. And that courage, it will be your greatest ally in the critical moment. So the question is simple but profound. Are you ready? Not just for the challenges of life, but for the greatest transition of all. Because whether you realize it or not, you're already in training. Every moment, every breath, every test is shaping the warrior within. And the real victory? It's not avoiding death. It's meeting it head-on, with eyes wide open, heart steady, and spirit unbreakable. Your next act begins now, whether you face it with fear or with fierce clarity. Final act, death, the teacher of all teachers. And now we arrive at the final reflection. We've traveled through the mysteries of death, the Bardos, the visions, the tests. We've seen how ancient wisdom and modern science intertwine, pointing us toward one unshakable truth. Death is not the enemy. Death is the ultimate teacher. It strips away illusions. It forces us to confront what truly matters. And it offers us the most profound gift of all, clarity. The Tibetan masters tell us, if you live with the awareness that today could be your last, you will finally understand what it means to truly live. Think about that. How would your choices change? How would your relationships shift? What would suddenly matter? And what would simply fall away? Because when we stop running from death, when we face it directly, it transforms from something to fear into something that illuminates every breath we take. And here's the deeper truth. This isn't just personal, it's collective. A society that is unafraid to talk about death, that prepares for it consciously, becomes a society that lives with greater courage, deeper wisdom, and more authentic connection. A society that prepares for death is a society that lives with eyes wide open. Look around today. So much of our world is driven by denial. Denial of aging. Denial of impermanence. Denial of endings. We build entire industries around the fantasy of eternal youth, of endless growth, of permanence. And yet, the truth is always there, waiting in the wings. Death is the great equalizer. It humbles kings and commoners alike. It reminds us that everything we cling to is, in the end, temporary. But here's the gift. When you embrace this truth, life becomes infinitely richer. You no longer waste time on petty conflicts. You stop procrastinating your dreams. You love harder. You forgive faster. You become, in every way, more awake. The Bardo Thodol teaches us that death isn't just a moment in the distant future. It's a mirror we can look into right now, if we have the courage. And when we do, we see that every breath, every heartbeat is a precious, fleeting miracle. We realize that the line between life and death is thinner than we ever imagined. This is why the Tibetan monks sit in graveyards to meditate. It's why they reflect daily on impermanence. Not because they are obsessed with death, but because they are obsessed with living fully. They understand a secret that so many of us miss. We only fear death when we haven't learned how to live. So as we close this journey together, I invite you to pause, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, are you living in a way that honors your impermanence? Are you building the awareness, the courage, and the love that will carry you through the ultimate transition? If the answer is yes, then you are already training. If not, today is the perfect day to begin. Comment below, I am training for my last breath. Because when we come together in this intention, we build something powerful, a global community of people who are not afraid to face reality, who are learning to live and die with eyes wide open. And remember this, always. Death is not the enemy. It is the greatest teacher. And we only fail when we stop learning. Whether you're young or old, healthy or sick, just beginning your spiritual journey or decades deep into it, this truth applies to you. It applies to all of us. And here's the final invitation. Bring this awareness into your daily life. When you wake up tomorrow, remind yourself, this day is a gift. It is temporary. How will I use it well? Because in the end, that is the greatest mastery, not to avoid death, but to live in such a way that when death comes, you can meet it like an old friend, with no regrets, no fear, and a heart full of peace. A new chapter awaits, and you are ready.